you are an entrepreneur, maybe a product manager, or even an investor. And you're right in the middle of that chaotic, exhilarating, and let's be honest, terrifying hunt for the Holy Grail.
The scalable, repeatable, and profitable business model.
Exactly. And the sources we've been looking at for this deep dive, they're not feel-good manifestos.
No, not at all. They're pretty brutal.
Brutal, necessary. They're really like a combat manual for this exact mission.
That's the perfect way to frame it. I mean, a startup is just fundamentally different from a small business or, a new division in a big company.
Right.
The core idea we're working with today is that a startup is a temporary organization, and it's defined by its fundamental unknowns. The old rules just don't apply.
So our goal today is to really unpack this rigorous scientific fact-based approach. It's called customer development.
Yep. And the idea is to give you the framework you need to turn all those initial wild guesses, your hopes and dreams, into hard, actionable, evidence-based strategy.
We've been diving into a really comprehensive methodology here. It's designed to be your companion, really, for the 6, maybe 30 months it usually takes to find that viable, repeatable model.
A long time.
A long time. And our mission is to show you how to just abandon that standard, flawed, traditional roadmap.
The one that leads straight into what the source calls the death spiral.
Right. And instead, adopt a scientific, iterative approach that.
Right.
That maximizes your chances of survival and hopefully eventual success.
It's a total shift in mindset. You're moving away from execution and into a mode of relentless search.
Okay, so to really appreciate the solution, I think we have to get deep into the problem first. Why do almost all of these established, new product introduction models, the MPI models, why do they fail so badly in a startup?
It all starts with defining the risk landscape, because risk is what truly separates a startup from a scale-up.
Okay, so let's unpack that. There are 2 main types of risk that any new venture faces. The first one is invention risk.
Right. This is the big, fundamental, often scientific question of, can the breakthrough even work? Like, at all?
In a commercial sense, yeah.
Yeah. We see this a lot in deep science fields. Life sciences, biotech, maybe the search for a cure for cancer. The source points out that while these risks are huge, modern engineering has tools to mitigate them.
You mean like simulation tools?
Exactly. Things like computational fluid dynamics or finite element analysis. You can basically model the physical world to death before you spend a single dime on a real functional prototype.
Right. But for the vast majority of companies today, digital consumer enterprise software, that invention risk is,
right.
Well, it's often pretty manageable, sometimes even negligible.
The core programming is engineering, not pure invention. It's been done before.
Which means the real existential threat, the thing that kills most startups, is that second type of risk, customer or market risk.
And that is the exact risk that the customer development process is built to solve. The unknown isn't can we build it, it's will anyone care?
Will customers adopt the product? Will they change how they do things? And maybe most importantly, will they actually open their wallets?
For so many companies, that is the single point of failure.
And it gets really tricky when you have to face both at the same time. If you're building a new web service, your risk is mostly on the market side.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine you're developing, say, a radical new semiconductor architecture. You've got massive invention risk. You have no idea if that chip will actually perform until you get the first silicon back from the fab.
And you still have intense customer risk, because now you have to convince these huge entrenched manufacturers to just abandon their existing suppliers and adopt your brand new, completely untested technology.
Or fighting a war on 2 fronts. And if you fail that market test, all that time, all that money you spent solving the invention risk, it was for nothing.
And that leads to the foundational error. The mistake most founders and their early investors make. They believe a startup can be managed with the same playbook designed for an established corporation.
The traditional new product introduction, or NPI, model.
Right. And that model is only appropriate when the market, the customers, the features, the competition, when all of that is already known and stable.
A startup knows none of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally defined by those unknowns.
This misunderstanding, it leads directly to the single biggest mistake you can make organizationally.
The misuse of the traditional business plan.
Yes.
I hear this all the time in the startup world. You need a plan to raise money. And look, that's true. But the sources we're looking at are they are unforgiving on this point.
They really are. The The business plan is fundamentally useless the moment that financing hits the bank.
Because it's just a collection of unproven assumptions.
It's rule number 5, carved in stone. No business plan survives first contact with customers.
And here's the crazy part.
The insanity.
Yeah, the insanity is that even though we all kind of know this intellectually, entrepreneurs immediately turn around and treat that plan, the one they wrote just to satisfy investors, as a cookbook for execution.
They start hiring people, spending money, setting product milestones, all based on revenue forecasts that are pure educated guesses.
They staff up, they build out entire marketing departments, they commit to these crazy timelines, all based on figures they literally pulled out of thin air 2 quarters ago.
It's organizational gambling,
Yeah.
and it locks the company into a trajectory that's based on pure fiction.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second. If the plan is so useless, why do VCs still insist on seeing it? I mean, isn't a detailed plan essential for getting that first check?
That's a great question.
Are they just going to laugh you out of the room if you show up with a business model canvas and say, hey, we'll figure it out as we go?
Right, and that really speaks to the necessary theater of the fundraising process. The plan is a necessary evil. It proves that you, the entrepreneur, can think holistically about the business.
It shows you understand how all the pieces are supposed to fit together.
Exactly. Sales, marketing, R&D, all of it. But a sophisticated investor knows that plan is going to change. They're betting on you, not the plan. The problem isn't making the plan.
The problem is treating it like it's this immutable operational document.
And that leads you straight into the death spiral of premature scaling.
This is where those paper plans start to kill real companies. The source gives the famous Webvan failure as this terrifying case study.
Oh, it's a classic. Webvan raised just a staggering amount of capital, and the management team, they were drawn heavily from these large, stable corporate backgrounds.
So they were uncomfortable with the chaos.
Deeply uncomfortable. Their instinct, their training, was to solve the chaos by imposing order and scaling fast.
Which is exactly the wrong thing to do.
Exactly backward. They scaled rapidly, building these massive, expensive distribution centers, hiring hundreds of people before they had validated any of the core assumptions.
Assumptions about customer density, delivery costs, what people were willing to pay.
All of it. Their attempt to impose that large company execution model prematurely just accelerated their cash burn and magnified every single mistake. It led straight to disaster.
And the biggest warning sign, the number one indicator that you're in this death spiral, is hiring VPs and senior executives way too early.
A VP of sales, a VP of marketing. These are masters of execution.
Right. They know how to optimize a known, repeatable process.
But if your company is still in the search phase, they have nothing proven to execute on. So they show up, they look at that faulty business plan, and they start staffing up their departments.
Driving massive, unnecessary spending.
All based on those guest revenue targets.
And all that spending is measured against a product launch date or a revenue forecast, which the source just calls false progress.
It's such a great term. You see it all the time. Whoa, we hired 30 people and spent $2 million, so we must be making progress.
That's not progress.
No. Progress is turning a hypothesis into a fact about your customer that leads to a repeatable, profitable action.
So the hiring and spending should only accelerate after the sales and marketing processes are proven.
Proven, predictable, repeatable, and scalable. Not when some arbitrary date on a business plan says you should start.
And the consequence of this whole execution-first approach is, well, it's organizational implosion.
It is. The overly ambitious revenue numbers are missed instantly. The sales force, under just immense pressure, starts to panic.
And they start running to engineering, asking for custom product versions, right?
Yeah.
Just to close 1 or 2 desperate deals.
Derailing the entire core product roadmap in the process. The board meetings get tense, management defaults to crisis mode, and inevitably someone has to get blamed.
And it's usually the new sales VP.
Almost always, they get fired because they missed the numbers. But the core problem was never the salesperson's execution. It was the untested, unvalidated business model they were forced to execute against.
The company was doomed before that VP even walked in the door.
By following that traditional NPI model, absolutely. The only way out of this cycle is to fundamentally change what you measure and how you organize.
Okay, so if that execution model is basically a death trap for a new venture, what's the alternative? It all seems to start with this core philosophy of customer development, which is drawing a very firm line between the searching phase versus the executing phase.
Exactly. Startups have to be organized to preserve cash while they're in that crucial search phase.
The search for that scalable, repeatable, profitable business model.
Right. And that search demands agility, which is why, instead of a fixed, rigid business plan, you should be using a business model canvas.
The canvas is a living document, right?
Yeah.
It's a tool that's built for change, not for stability.
It breaks the business model down into 9 essential boxes: value proposition, customer segments, channels, revenue streams, things like that.
And every single assumption you write in those boxes is, at the beginning, just a hypothesis, a guess.
A guess waiting to be either invalidated or validated by the market.
So the winners, the companies that actually make it through this search phase, are the ones who combine two things: agile engineering and customer development.
It's a powerful combination. Agile engineering lets the team build minimum product features very, very quickly. Customer development tells them which features to build and who to build them for,
So they iteratively build, test, and search.
converting the greatest source of their risk, all those unknowns, into known, testable facts.
Which brings us to the most important and maybe the most neglected rule of all: get out of the building.
It's so simple, but so critical. Your hypotheses, they all start on paper. They are not facts. If you aren't engaging directly with the market face-to-face, virtually, through rapid-fire testing, you are just building in a vacuum.
Founders have to get out there and gather the data that challenges all their initial assumptions.
And that commitment to external validation is what fuels the rapid iteration and the necessary pivots that you have to make.
So let's talk about the engine of this whole process, the insight cycle.
Yes. This is a continuous loop, and it's designed to replace certainty with curiosity. You don't know the answer, so you have to test to find it.
It starts with your hypotheses.
Yeah.
So maybe your team is totally confident that your ideal customer is, say, male, 24 to 35, high disposable income, lives in an urban apartment, and buys coffee at Starbucks.
That's a strong, specific guess, which is good.
So the next step is to design a tangible, low-cost experiment to test that specific hypothesis. You don't need a full product yet.
Not at all. You could just use a simple landing page. Maybe run a highly targeted Google AdWords campaign focused on those urban areas, with ads tailored to that demographic.
And then you just measure the click-through rate and the sign-up conversions.
Step 3 is you run the experiment, and you carefully collect and analyze the data. This is raw, objective evidence. How many people clicked? What did they do on the page? What was our cost per acquisition?
And this leads to the insight. And the insight might be, oops, we spent $5,000, and while we got a lot of clicks from those urban males, almost none of them signed up.
But interestingly, our lowest cost per acquisition actually came from teen girls in the suburbs who clicked on an adjacent, untargeted ad,
Your initial hypothesis was just dramatically wrong.
which forces the final step. You have to iterate or pivot. If the results so dramatically mismatch your core assumption, if your target customer isn't converting, you can't just keep going.
You have to change your core business model components, the customer segment, the value proposition, the channel. Something has to change based on these new facts.
This continuous objective cycle, it's the only way to genuinely discover truth in the market.
You know, this whole iterative cycle brings up a really profound point about leadership. The sources are absolutely unequivocal that founders must lead the entire customer development process.
Especially the discovery and validation phases.
They cannot delegate this searching activity to a middle manager or some early hire.
They can't.
Okay, I have to challenge that a bit. If the founder is supposed to be focusing on fundraising, keeping the lights on, shouldn't they hire a talented product manager or a biz dev exec to run these validation interviews? Why can't they delegate?
It's a fair question, and the reason is twofold. And it gets right to the heart of organizational authority.
Okay.
First, the founder is the only person in the company who has the organizational and the financial authority to actually pivot the company.
Right. A subordinate manager can't just decide to change the entire revenue model.
Exactly. If the market dictates a fundamental change in the target customer or the pricing, a middle manager simply cannot make that call.
That makes sense from an authority standpoint,
Yeah.
but what about the cultural side of it?
That's the second reason, and it's psychological and cultural. A subordinate manager who, was probably hired to execute the current plan, they rarely have the courage or the political capital to report truly catastrophic customer feedback directly to the founder.
They might filter it or soften the bad news.
Right. But if the founder hears the brutal, unvarnished flaws of their own vision directly from a customer's mouth, that creates a visceral, emotional, and intellectual impact that nothing else can match.
That direct feedback gives the founder the conviction they need to authorize a really painful but strategic pivot.
If you delegate discovery, you are just delaying an inevitable failure.
Okay, so the first real structured phase of customer development, after you've mapped out all your initial hypotheses, is customer discovery. And the goal here seems deceptively simple.
It is. It's to prove that you understand the customer's problem better than they do, and that your proposed solution is the right fit for that problem.
And this is where we run into what is probably the most counterintuitive advice for anyone trained in traditional marketing.
Which is, develop the product for the few, not the many.
You are absolutely not aiming for the mainstream customer at this point.
No way. Trying to build a full, feature-rich product for the mainstream consumer at this stage is a massive trap. It takes too much time, it burns too much cash, and the market will have already shifted by the time you launch.
So instead, successful startups focus their development on this tiny, visionary subset of the market, the early evangelists.
I love that term. It's perfect because these aren't just early adopters. They are true believers.
They're buying into the total long-term vision of the company, not just the incomplete, buggy, barely functional product you have today.
They tolerate the rough edges because the problem you're solving for them is causing such intense, quantifiable pain.
And identifying these visionaries is critical. They provide the first cash flow and the most honest, actionable feedback you will ever get.
And they have to be at the very, very top of the customer pain scale, which is why we look for 3 very specific characteristics.
Okay, first one.
Yeah.
They are actively searching for a solution right now.
Mhm.
And they have an internal timetable for finding one. They're not just waiting around.
They're looking. Second, the problem has to be so painful, so acute, that they have already cobbled together some kind of interim, homemade, often absurd solution.
This is that visual anchor the source provides. The entrepreneur walks into a prospect's office and sees them using a solution they literally made by taping together a fork, a light bulb, and a vacuum cleaner.
It sounds funny, but that visual desperation is proof. It proves the pain point exists and that there are no good commercial solutions available.
I love that image. It's the physical manifestation of an unserved need. And the third characteristic, this is the one that often separates the true early evangelists from people who are just interested.
This is the big one.
They have to have or be able to quickly acquire the budget dollars to purchase your product, even in its incomplete state.
That willingness to pay. It is the ultimate test. If they won't pay for early access, assuming it's a single-sided market, they are simply not early evangelists.
Their purchase validates everything, not just the solution, but the buying process, the pricing model, the entire value proposition.
Exactly. So once you've identified your initial targets, the next step is to deeply commit to understanding the customer's world. You have to go way beyond simple demographics and actually quantify the intensity of their pain.
Put a dollar figure on the problem.
Yes. The source gives this fantastic illustration, the bank story. A startup was targeting bank branch managers. They didn't just ask if the long lines on Fridays were annoying.
They quantified it.
They did. The bank estimated they were losing 5 to 8% of their customers who were so frustrated with the lines they were just walking away and never coming back.
Wow.
That translated directly to a loss of $500,000 in annual profits per branch.
So when you can walk into that sales pitch and say, we can save you $500,000 a year,
Yeah.
you validated your value proposition.
It got their attention. And the tool for getting to that level of understanding is creating a day-in-the-life scenario.
You literally map out the customer's day in minute detail, 15 or 30-minute increments from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep.
This forces you to understand the context. When, how, and where does your product fit into their existing routine?
And here's the crucial hidden insight you get from that.
You discover what the customer is giving up to use your product. Are they sacrificing time they currently spend on Facebook? Are they sleeping less? Are they delegating other tasks at work?
If your product doesn't solve a problem that's painful enough to justify that trade-off in time or effort, it will fail.
The day-in-the-life scenario helps you articulate the real cost of behavioral change for them.
On top of that, you have to map the full complexity of the organization around your user. You need to identify all the different customer types.
The actual end users, sure, but also the decision makers who approve the technical specs, the economic buyers who control the budget.
And especially the saboteurs.
Oh, yes.
Right.
The people internally who might veto the sale out of fear of losing their job, fear of change, or just simple departmental rivalry.
Drawing an organizational or influence map helps you navigate that political landscape. We see this all the time in enterprise sales.
A visionary user loves your product, but the entrenched IT department, the saboteur, shoots it down because it threatens their legacy system.
Missing the saboteur is just as fatal as missing the economic buyer.
Which brings us to the physical artifact of all this searching, the MVP, or minimum viable product.
The MVP is not an incomplete product. It's the physical set of core features, and only the indispensable core features designed specifically to solicit feedback from those early evangelists.
The goal is very precise. It's to test if the product's most important features alone prompt the customer to use it, pay for it, or commit to it.
And engineers have a tendency to constantly add features. It's just in their nature.
The old joke is that if an engineer's product isn't broken, it just doesn't have enough features yet.
Right. So the MVP acts as this disciplinary force against that feature creep. It says, stop, test, and only build what the customer data demands next.
But the MVP, by its very definition, is incomplete. It's probably buggy, so why should a sophisticated early evangelist take a chance on a product that is, by design, unfinished?
Because the founder provides a vision narrative.
You can't just sell the buggy present. You have to paint a vivid picture of the future. This long-term vision, 3 to 5 years, outpaints a picture of radical transformation using simple bullet points or user stories.
The early evangelist is buying into that future promise.
And the founder's competence to get there.
The source gives a great historical analogy about financial software from the 90s. The problem was stated so clearly. Consumers hate to reconcile their checkbooks.
The first vision stage was, we think we can develop a computer program that emulates a checkbook, and then the expansion. After we succeed with consumers, we'll expand into financial software for small businesses.
That clear, staged vision allows the early adopter to justify the pain of using an incomplete product today.
For the immense benefit of the transformation that's coming tomorrow.
All right, so you've got your MVP, you've identified your early evangelists. Now the team moves into phase 3 of customer discovery, testing the solution.
This phase is all about challenging the value proposition, the product features, the proposed pricing, the viability of the solution itself, and you're testing it against clear pass-fail goals.
And for a web or mobile product, this means creating a high-fidelity MVP. This isn't just a slide deck.
No, this is a live site, a live demo, or a detailed interactive prototype. It's designed to simulate the real customer experience and measure real customer behavior.
Are they clicking where you want them to click? Are they getting stuck or confused?
And remember, even here in phase 3, the goal is not to scale sales widely. The goal is validation.
You're looking for that visceral confirmation from your early customers. You want to hear them say, even with just these minimum features, this solves our core problem.
Or the golden phrase, when can I get it and how much does it cost?
Let's go back to the Epiphany case study because it perfectly captures the urgency and, frankly, the organizational courage you need for a successful fast pivot.
It's such a great story. So Epiphany was developing this database marketing software for large financial institutions. They found their ideal early evangelist at Schwab, the VP of database marketing.
And she was generous with her time, giving them detailed feedback.
She was. She loved the core concept, the radical idea that you could do real-time drill downs in a database through a web browser, which was revolutionary at the time.
But
After reviewing the technical specs, she politely pointed out a fatal flaw. The product was missing householding.
okay, what exactly is householding in that context?
It's a critical feature. It recognizes that multiple people at the same physical address often pool their investments or trade together as a family unit.
So Schwab couldn't use Epiphany's system if it only tracked individuals.
Exactly. The underlying database schema didn't account for these complex multi-investor family sharing accounts. The solution was fundamentally incomplete for their specific business needs.
So the founders had correctly identified a massive, problem-slow, difficult database reporting. But the solution's architecture was just wrong.
This is the moment where so many startups freeze up. They delay, they argue with the customer, they try to defend their original spec.
But this team did something instantly courageous.
One of the founders, Ben, he just smiled at the Schwab VP and told his colleague, Steve, to show them page 6 of our product spec.
And Steve, realizing their spec only had 5 pages.
Paused, and Ben said, "Not anymore." In that moment, they didn't just promise to fix it, they mentally committed the resources, they removed a less critical feature to make room for householding, and they fundamentally pivoted the underlying schema on the spot.
Wow. That rapid, unhesitating pivot, just admitting the plan was instantly wrong and changing direction, that resulted in Epiphany's first major purchase order from Schwab.
It did. The willingness to change demonstrated not weakness, but strength and focus. It validated the entire customer discovery model.
So as founders are out there testing their MVP in Phase 3, the feedback they get from customers generally falls into 4 critical categories.
And understanding which category you're in dictates whether you pivot, proceed, or have to go all the way back to the beginning.
Okay, Category 1 is the dream scenario. I need this now, and I will pay for it.
If you get that response and the financials add up, you proceed directly to validation and scaling tests.
Then there's Category 4, which is the unambiguous bad news. I see no problem here, and I have no need for this.
A definitive rejection of your core value proposition. If you get that feedback and you keep going, you're on a death march to failure. You have to restart discovery, go back to phase 1.
But the most emotionally seductive and maybe the most financially dangerous response is Category 2.
I need this, but it needs more features.
This sounds like progress, because the customer has at least admitted to the pain, but they're not willing to commit yet.
And it demands a really careful balance. The source cautions that sometimes it can take a massive amount of additional unvalidated product development, which means more cash burn, to turn that lukewarm Category 2 into a convincing purchase-ready Category 1.
You have to figure out if that extra feature is truly indispensable or if you're just getting sucked into feature creep.
And finally, Category 3. I hear you, but I don't care.
Indifference.
Total indifference. The customer acknowledges the problem exists, but it's simply not painful enough or urgent enough for them to change their behavior or spend any money.
And indifference, Category 3, that often signals a profound lack of product market fit, or that you're just targeting the wrong customer type entirely.
Remember the core rule. You need customers to be jumping over the table for your product. If they're just passively saying, "That's nice," you pivot. The discipline here is to listen to the facts, the lack of enthusiasm, and not your own wishful thinking.
And that brings us to this crucial juncture. At the end of customer discovery, before you go and spend mass amounts of capital on scaling and execution, the startup has to answer one fundamental question: pivot or proceed?
This analysis, it determines if your modified fact-based hypotheses provide a sound enough foundation for the huge, often irreversible expenditures that are coming during customer validation.
So to make that decision, you have to verify the results of your search against 3 critical questions. And the answers need to be based on objective, quantifiable data you collected from real customers.
Question 1 is, have we found a product market fit?
Is there sizable demand for solving the problem you identified? And does your MVP actually fill that demand in the eyes of a paying customer?
For consumer or social network startups, the source advises you need objective, active engagement data.
And that data threshold is critical. If your product is free or freemium, you should be looking for 3 to 5 times the number of active users compared to a paid product. We're talking maybe 1,500 to 5,000 active engaged users.
Right. To confidently say you have product market fit, for a paid enterprise product, you need a smaller but intensely committed group of only evangelists who have already written you a check.
The number isn't arbitrary. It represents a minimum statistical significance.
Okay, question 2. Who are our customers and how do we reach them affordably?
This is all about verifying your sales and distribution channel hypotheses. You should be able to draw a detailed customer archetype, map out their day-in-the-life scenario,
And know exactly what industry publications they read, which trade shows they go to, and which industry gurus they follow.
This verification process leads to the creation of the sales roadmap.
This roadmap is your repeatable funnel model. It requires concrete answers. Who is the decision maker? Who is the economic buyer? How long does a typical sales cycle take? 60 days, 180 days. Where does the budget actually come from?
If you can't define that roadmap, you can't scale sales reliably, and you are not ready to proceed.
And then question 3, can we make money? This requires verifying financial viability, where decisions have to be absolutely fact-based, not faith-based.
A board is only going to track a few financial metrics at this stage, but those few are vital.
The cash burn rate, the number of months of cash you have remaining, any short-term hiring plans, and the projected time until you hit cash flow break-even.
And during this building product stage customer discovery, the sources offer some specific burn rate guidelines for web and mobile ventures.
They do. They suggest the burn rate should be kept extremely low, ideally between $50,000 and $75,000 a month.
That sounds really low.
It is, and it's entirely strategic. It's designed to fund a small, tight team, 3 or 4 key engineers and the founders, and critically, it preserves your runway.
By keeping the burn low, you maximize the number of chances you have to pivot and iterate before the money runs out.
Cash equals time, and time equals chances to find the fit.
For web and mobile companies, viability really hinges on these metrics that predict future scalability. You need firm data on the estimated per-user cost of delivering the service,
Your customer acquisition costs, or CAC,
prospect conversion and retention rates, and the all-important viral network effects.
viral network effects. That tells you how many new customers your existing customers bring in for free. If your entire scaling model depends on constantly buying customers through paid ads, the business is fundamentally fragile.
Viability means the model has to show some kind of organic, self-sustaining element of growth.
We can illustrate how this financial verification works with the hypothetical Easy Gardener example. It's a physical product, a $30 gardening tool set.
Okay.
Let's imagine this company started customer creation with $500,000 in seed money. Their financial model tracks quarterly data based on test-driven assumptions.
And when Easy Gardener sells a physical product, they're dealing with much more complex costs.
Right. They start with gross sales projections, but then they have to immediately factor in significant channel discounts. We're talking 40% when you're dealing with retail stores or distributors.
Plus high sales costs and the cost of goods sold, the COGS.
So their cash burn computation shows how quickly things can swing. In their model, they start with a pretty substantial cash burn in the first quarter, say $112,000.
And another $69,000 in Q2 as they ramp up.
This is necessary spending. You have to build inventory and establish your channels.
But the key is the projected shift, and that shift is based on their validated hypotheses.
By Q3, their test-driven model showed them hitting a positive cash burn, a small surplus of $1,500. And by Q4, a significant positive cash flow of $186,000.
And that's the goal. You have to demonstrate, with numbers grounded in real customer transactions, that the business model not only works, but is also scalable and profitable within your initial financing window.
If those projections don't show a clear path to break even, the only rational answer is to pivot the business model before you proceed.
This level of financial rigor, it ties directly back to what we were saying about leadership. If a founder can defend the future of the company with this level of objective, test-driven financial and customer data, not just anecdotes, they've built an executive defense against an execution-minded board that might be looking to replace them.
So if the 3 critical questions are all answered with a resounding proceed, the focus then shifts decisively to scaling.
But the founder's role doesn't diminish here. They have to continue to lead the validation and scaling teams. They can't just delegate all authority.
Absolutely not. And the reason is simple. The possibility of a major pivot never truly disappears, and only the founder has the authority to pull that trigger.
As the company formalizes itself for scaling, there are 2 key roles and structures that need to be established to make sure the company stays fact-based rather than faith-based. First, the advisory board.
It needs to be formalized and upgraded. And this isn't about collecting impressive names for your letterhead.
It's about strategic impact.
Pure strategic impact. Your advisors should provide great introductions and, crucially, bold, out-of-the-box business model design thinking. They have to be willing to look at the hard data you collected during discovery and challenge the very foundation of the model you found.
To make sure you didn't just settle for good enough.
Exactly. The second role, especially for high-velocity web and mobile companies, is the data analytics chief.
The guardian of the truth.
That's a great way to put it. They are responsible for driving continuous improvement.
In this role, it requires more than just being good with numbers.
Oh, much more. They need an innate curiosity, the ability to prioritize and collect only key, actionable data, not reams of useless vanity metrics, and they need the clout to force a pivot when the data demands it.
So if the data chief sees a fundamental flaw in your conversion rates that threatens that whole Easy Gardener financial model we just talked about.
They must have the organizational backing to force a strategic course correction.
So scaling means launching the full sales and marketing apparatus. This is often called the acquisition and activation funnel.
And the process is a continuous loop of test, measure, tweak. You're measuring if your tactics to acquire customers actually bring in users who then activate or buy.
Let's break down the acquisition phase. This is the get T customers part.
The strategies here have to earn the click. They need to be inherently inviting, helpful, or entertaining. People start their search with a need, and your content has to be visible, inviting, and not too salesy in that initial engagement.
These acquisition tactics fall into a few categories. You've got earned media PR, social networking coverage, which is hard to get but carries very high trust.
Then there are free tactics like search engine optimization, SEO, and viral marketing, which aim for organic growth.
And then there are the paid tactics, Google AdWords, direct mail, display ads, where you have to be relentless about measuring your cost per acquisition, your CPA.
If your CPA exceeds your projected customer lifetime value, your LTV, you are literally buying a death sentence for your company.
Then comes the activation phase, which is the critical choke point.
This is the moment, often it's just seconds long, where a first-time visitor crosses the threshold and becomes an active, engaged user. Activation has to happen immediately, right on the home or landing page.
So your activation plans require these highly optimized pages with multiple calls to action, big, unambiguous buttons, and heavy use of interactivity.
Videos, calculators, immediate sign-up forms. If you can't get them to activate into a paid customer right away, you at least have to get them to sign up for a newsletter or free trial so you can persuade them later.
The goal is to maximize the percentage of visitors who become users.
Now we get to the back half of the funnel: optimizing, keep, and grow. The fundamental financial principle here is that it is 5 to 10 times cheaper to retain an existing customer than it is to acquire a new one.
Retention is your financial superpower.
It really is. Retention, or keep, requires the closest monitoring of customer behavior, and it's often segmented by cohorts.
So all the customers who signed up in the same month.
Exactly. You track key health indicators: dwindling visits, an increase in support complaints, reduced response rates on outreach programs. If your January cohort's activity drops significantly below the December cohort, you have a massive problem that needs immediate attention.
And tactics for retention include loyalty programs, consistent software updates that add value.
And personalized support. The source really emphasizes that old-fashioned phone check-in calls are far more effective than automated email outreach.
Which is easy to ignore and just feels like spam.
Personal interaction is often the highest leverage retention tactic you have.
And finally, grow. This is about maximizing customer lifetime value by encouraging referrals and selling more services or upgrades.
The source highlights that customer referrals are the most honest source of new business. They come with an innate trust that you just can't buy.
So you achieve that growth through things like offering tangible incentives for sharing or liking your service.
Or by engineering virality directly into the product experience. Think back to Gmail's early strategy, where every single message sent included the tagline, "Invite recipient to Gmail."
That was engineering a viral loop.
It was. And you have to monitor your viral growth factor, the number of new users generated by one existing user on a weekly basis. If that factor is consistently below 1, your growth is totally dependent on expensive acquisition, which is a structural weakness.
The ultimate test of this network effect is behavioral, but you can quantify it.
You can.
Yeah.
Simply ask those early paying customers. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this product to your friends or colleagues?
And if the majority of answers aren't a 9 or a 10, the product lacks the intrinsic word-of-mouth growth potential you need to scale affordably.
To continuously fine-tune all these funnel stages, there are several optimization tools that become essential once you go live. You have usability tests, for one.
And these can be done cheaply and quickly.
Yeah, as informally as inviting target customers to a coffee shop conference room and just watching them engage with your MVP or your landing page. Where do they click? Where do they hesitate? Do they understand the navigation?
These tests identify confusing copy or fatal navigation flaws that raw data alone might miss.
Then you have heat maps. This is software that tracks user clicks, mouse movements, gaze patterns, and it translates that activity into colored regions, yellow, orange, red, to show where user focus is highest.
So if users are spending all their time reading your legal disclaimer when they should be clicking the Buy Now button, the heat map tells you exactly where your visual hierarchy is broken.
And finally, eye tracking. This monitors the specific path users' eyes take across a screen. For English web pages, users typically follow a Z pattern left to right across the top, then diagonally skimming down.
Knowing that pattern is crucial. You have to make sure your most important content, your critical invitations, and your calls to action are placed precisely in those high-traffic spots.
This entire optimization toolkit allows the company to continuously squeeze more conversion and retention out of every single step of the funnel.
So what we've really detailed today is this necessary discipline journey that transforms a risky internal guess on a business model canvas.
Into a verified, repeatable, market-tested system. The core of the customer development process is just a relentless, unyielding commitment to forming a hypothesis, testing it objectively, and then having the courage to pivot based on hard customer facts, not internal hopes.
And the fundamental lesson here is that speed and adaptability are really the currency of a startup, the rapid iteration cycles, the inherent cash conservation of this approach. It gives entrepreneurs significantly more chances to pivot, to iterate, and ultimately to succeed before their funding runs dry.
The best founders aren't the ones who are always right. They're the ones who don't hesitate to admit when their initial hypotheses were wrong.
As we discussed, that transition point from the search phase, from discovery to the scaling phase of validation, is often this moment of existential crisis for the founder.
It is. Once the model is proven to scale, investors inevitably start asking if the original risk-taking, often manic founder should be replaced by a professional suit, a seasoned executive with proven execution skills.
So knowing that the founding founders must retain the authority to lead the pivot decision, because they, and only they, hold that intimate, innate customer understanding they gained from months of searching, the ultimate test for the entrepreneur is this.
How effectively can you translate that deep qualitative customer data and those hard-won quantitative facts into the executive language of metrics and viability?
To preserve your leadership role as the company prepares for the massive, irreversible spend of scaling, that ability to influence and govern through objective fact rather than just charisma is what determines who remains at the helm for the long run.